This is our COVID Roundup and CDC update for May 9th, 2025. So, scrolling down and we look at our COVID variant tracking, we see that LP8.1 is listed at 70% of all variants by proportion. We see that XFC is the next leading variant, and then there's XEC, which is heading out, and LF7.7.2, which had gone up to about 5 or 6% last week, is now dropped down to 3%, so that one has decreased. And they're actually missing a few variants that should be listed on here already. So we'll cover that in a moment. So if we go over to Raj's COVID variant tracking, we'll see that something very interesting has happened. It looks like we have the most data that I have ever seen Raj present on the dashboard at this time. This is actually pretty incredible. This is a lot of data. What we'll see here is that LP8.1.1 is still the leading variant. LP8.1 is only existing at about 9% of all variants by proportion right now. So right now it is not LP8.1 that is the leading variant in circulation right now. It is a subvariant of it, LP8.1.1. That is the true leading variant at this time. And then two ones of note is going to be NB1.8.1 and then also XFC, and then maybe like a small notable XFJ as well. So if we go over to Mike Honey and we look at this, so the latest global variant picture is that LP8.1 appears to have peaked and is starting to taper down. It holds constant for a little bit and then starts its decline gradually. That's what we've seen with variants in the past. And right now, XDV star, which is led by NB1.8.1, the one we were talking about last week. This looks like the next likely challenger, where it's strongly rising globally to about 11%. It's this purple right here, the XDV, which is led strongly by NB1.8.1. And then of note, there is that XFC variant, which is basically LP8.1.1. It's just one more mutation down the line. So if we go over to the CDC's tracker, so again, XFC, there's a couple close ones, so just make sure you look at that. It is listed here, so it's interestingly because there should be LP8.1.1 in the middle here, and then XFC could be attached to that, or it could be attached to LP8.1. I think that it should probably be LP8.1, LP8.1.1, and then XFC coming off that. It's not technically a subvariant of that, so maybe actually just having it right next to it, having two tails coming off, that would be more representative of our current situation. And there isn't a ton of information out right now on the XDV lineage, pointing to specific COVID variants that it is a mutation of. But if we go over to next strain and we look at NB1.8.1, which is a subvariant of XDV, then we look back and see that it has relation to JN1. So it's several mutations down the line from JN1, which is back in mid-2023. So this is continued evolution of that, meaning that if we look over to JN1 here, it's going to be another branch somewhere in this right here that it'll be branching off of. So it's not going to be in this current subsection of variants that we're kind of having a predominant lineage from that's related to the KP2s, KP3s, type of thing. It's going to be a different branch over here, so that's always not good because that means it's going to have a unique immune profile. So it's going to have immune evasion is what I meant to say. And then diving into our COVID wastewater data with the NWSS, I'm going to start off with this map right here, and I really need to emphasize that this COVID viral activity level is a very poor indicator. So this is the scale they use: very low, low, moderate, high, very high. So what they do is, well, we're going to ignore this. I've talked about this many, many times, but I'm going to focus on this map right here because this is what's actually important. This is all of the quote unquote raw data. And what they do for these categories, which are the same categories as they are right here, how they list them. So they take the highest levels recorded at a site and then they bin it. So 80 to 100% of the highest levels ever recorded at a facility, that's red. 60 to 79% of the highest levels, that's orange. 40 to 59%, that's this white color, this whitish blue. 20 to 39% is this lighter blue, and 0 to 19% is the dark blue. And you can see that the large swath of these 1,100 samples is above the lowest bin. So I would not call this very low, low, moderate, high, very high. I would call this low because 0 to 20% of the highest levels is still going to be pretty significant COVID in the wastewater. So if we hide that and then just show everything else, these 5, 6, 7, almost 800 sites right here, that's showing us that all of these are going to be at pretty substantial levels. So this is going to be 20 to 39% of the highest levels ever recorded. I called that moderate. 40 to 59% of the highest levels ever recorded at the facility, I'd call that a low level high. 60 to 79%, I'd call that a moderate level high. And then I'd call the 80 to 100% very high. So this is what I would call this. And then these 0 to 19%, it's never at 0% these days. I don't think I see that ever. These would be what I would consider low, not very low, but low. And you can see that the vast majority is much higher than this low category. So when they're saying, oh, it's low COVID viral activity right now, one, this is a terrible measure. I've covered this before, but it's actually not low. The vast majority of the US is at what I would call moderate levels of COVID in the wastewater. Well, let me rephrase that. I think probably between moderate and low level high is what I would call it, because about 700 facilities are within 20 to 59% of the highest levels they've ever recorded. And then looking more granularly at, well, first we'll look at New York. So very quickly, they've only got 99 facilities that are participating currently. They're down from 210. 95 of these facilities aren't actually reporting data, so it's very hard to do a summary on New York. In general, it's been holding at fairly high levels for a while, but that's all we can really say because all of these labs are going through a data transition, and then we're also somehow losing facilities up here and over here, which isn't listed in the data laboratory transfer, so not really sure why that's happening. But New York isn't really accurately represented right now, unfortunately. And then looking over to wastewater scan in the 28 reporting wastewater facilities to wastewater scan in California, we're starting to see a pretty clear signal increase. If we zoom in, we can pull out which facilities are heading up the highest right now. So the first one is going to be Vallejo, California. The second one is going to be Novato. And then the next highest one is going to be Palo Alto. And if we zoom all the way back out, because for some reason they auto default the graphs here to just like 2.5 years, but this is the full thing. So we've had tons and tons of waves. We've had this unusually low period in California. I suspect that it's probably due to our measuring technique, in that there actually is pretty substantial COVID, but due to the fluorescent signal not being as strong, as its COVID has continued to mutate further and further away from the initial probes, binding probes for measuring it. This is something that I think is going to be later revealed to be a measurement error, and we'll probably have to back correct, and then that data is going to look much higher than it actually is. And then if we look over to the 148 reporting wastewater facilities to wastewater scan in the US, again showing the full picture, we see that the highest points actually, I believe, are around California right now, interestingly enough. But we also have Oakhurst, New Jersey, Coralville, Indianapolis, I think, and then West Bank, New Orleans, LA, and South Parker, Colorado. So those ones, in addition to the California ones, are currently at our highest levels in the US. And that concludes our COVID Roundup and CDC update for this week.